Get a win in week 8 over the Arizona Cardinals, 31-24. We talk about the game, what happened, and so much more coming up next year on this live edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, your team every single day. Thank you so much for being here on this live late night edition and making us your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube or anywhere you get your audio podcasts. It's the same show, both audio and video. And thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every day. Again, as we come to you after every single Ravens game live, it's awesome to engage with the chat on these. You can subscribe here on YouTube. You can follow along in audio form. It is free either way. You can also subscribe on subtext for the Locked On Ravens Insiders group for another way, like one-on-one text conversations and other insight mailbags over there as well. But it was a big day for the Ravens as they pick up a win, maybe not as pretty as a lot of people expected, but as many people do say, a win is a win. So we're going to be talking about everything that happened in the game, from how Lamar Jackson and the offense looked to how the defense dominated yet again. And we'll get into some trade talk towards the end of the show, as I know the trade deadline coming up on Tuesday. So there are some questions about where the Ravens could add to this 6-2 football team as they look to continue to carry their momentum, hopefully into this game against Seattle they have in week 9. But I know for the Ravens, this game against the Cardinals was one that a lot of people had labeled as maybe a trap game, right? A game where you don't necessarily play your best because the team you're playing is not, on top of the world, like a contender. The Cardinals entered this game at 1-6, I believe, and they had played teams close, and I expected it to be close early and then the Ravens to pull away late, which is kind of what happened to an extent, but I didn't expect it to be as sloppy. And we have Matthias in the chat saying Ravens dub, top of the AFC North. David Garcia, my guy in here, saying get him, big dog. Yes, sir. Kevin O, great show as always. Little homie, I appreciate you, David. And Matt saying we need to try and scheme more plays for Bate. Rashad Bateman was great. We'll talk about him. At least I thought overall he was good. I didn't know the play where he essentially saved Lamar from an interception. We'll talk about that. There's a lot to like about this game, but there's also a lot the Ravens could improve on. We'll talk about both sides of that. Let's just start with the stats to jump off here. Lamar finished this one 18-27 for 157 passing yards with a touchdown, and also had 5 carries for 17 yards. I thought he started off this game with a couple of not so great throws, like risky throws. And I think the one, just getting into Rashad Bateman, like Matt said, he threw one, he was under pressure, and it would have been picked off if Rashad Bateman did not come back and make one heck of an effort at the ball, comes down with a great catch, saves Lamar from that interception. And that was a key point in the game for me. You can always identify a couple of points in every game that might be underrated at the moment, or like you say, oh, that's a cool play. But it comes back and you're thinking about it, and you're like, wow, that really was a tone setter. What if the Cardinals had intercepted the ball in that play? I can't remember who the defender was who would have gotten it, but the Cardinals had already gone down the field and scored on the Ravens defense. It was 7-0 at that point. You needed a response from the Ravens offense to feel like, oh, okay, they're in this and it's not going to get crazy away from you. Because again, what goes on if for the Ravens, the Cardinals go up 14-0 or 10-0? It becomes a different ball game, and maybe the Ravens still pull that out, right? I think the Ravens, again, come back and do their thing, but it just changes the landscape of it. So with that Bateman catch, the Ravens end up getting a touchdown out of that drive. Was the Mark Andrews homecoming touchdown, as he grew up in Arizona, was a nice story. But that play by Rashad Bateman, I want to make sure I give him a lot of credit for that. And he played with high effort and high intensity in this game. It was a Gus Edwards run, I think it was. Bateman blocked really well, kind of got in the middle of things and blocked, had a really nice block that sprung the runner free. Those are the types of plays you want to see out of your guys. And Rashad Bateman played, I think, with a lot of tenacity today, which was awesome. Raven 76 B more saying KO salute. What's up? I appreciate you being in here. Yeah, Raven 76 B more also says Michael Pierce showed out today. We'll get to Michael Pierce in a couple of minutes, but yes, Michael Pierce played incredible football today. But with Lamar, wasn't his best game, but didn't really have like mistakes. Again, a couple of throws were questionable, missed a couple here and there, but 9 incompletions as a whole. Didn't really push the ball down the field. I would have liked to see the Ravens push the ball down the field a little bit more. One of the things we'll talk about a little bit in the second segment as we kind of continue here on the show tonight is I thought that some of the trickeration positive steps forward that I talked about last week, where it wasn't just force feed Zay Flowers on reverses and that's it. We started to see that again. I thought the creativity was awesome last week, wasn't so awesome this week. Gus Edwards, the Ravens fed him, though. 19 carries for 80 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. Rashad Bateman did have a reverse. He had that 1 carry for 18 yards. Lamar Jackson, 5 for 17. Justice Hill, 4 for 15. Wasn't really a big day for anybody receiving-wise. Mark Andrews and Justice Hill both had 4 catches for 40 yards. The difference being that Mark Andrews had his 1 touchdown. Rashad Bateman, 2 for 34. Flowers, 5 for 19. Gus Edwards, 2 for 14. Isaiah Likely, 1 for 10. Odell Beckham Jr. had 4 targets, no catches for him. So I feel like with what the Ravens wanted to do in this game, the Cardinals played a very physical defensive game, and we're just making things pretty uncomfortable for the Ravens early on. But I will give the Ravens credit for a couple of things as we kind of move into the defensive side of the ball, because that's where I want to talk, because I think the defense played a much better game than the offense, although based off what Roquan Smith and Marlon Humphrey were saying after the game, they were not happy with the defensive performance. And yeah, they got run on a little bit too, right? I don't necessarily think that they had their all-around perfect, amazing game, but let's face it, they kind of carried the offense and set the offense up throughout most of this contest. So defensively, Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen ended up pacing this team with 11 tackles each. That's kind of what you expect from this team. Kyle Hamilton had 10. Brandon Stevens had 7 and an interception. Michael Pierce had 5 tackles. And we can kind of stop with Pierce right now because this was probably one of the better games Michael Pierce has played in his entire career, if not the best game Michael Pierce has played in. I mean, he was all over the place. He was everywhere. 5 tackles, as I mentioned, had a sack, a big tackle for loss, a pass deflection. He was everywhere on the field, multiple big run stops. The Cardinals went for it on 4th down twice pretty early in the game on 4th and short situations. And Michael Pierce played a really big part in both of those. And even on big 3rd down plays, Pierce was in there getting stops. That's exactly what you want out of a guy, Michael Pierce, who you would think, nose tackles don't stay on the field on 3rd down, don't stay on the field in pass rushing situations. Michael Pierce doesn't get enough credit for his pass rushing ability. He's one of the better interior nose tackles that can rush the passer in the league. And while, the CBS broadcast had some interesting words from Michael Pierce in his build, Pierce dominates off the snap because it's hard to single team him. We saw a swing move. He had an array of moves that he had both in Baltimore in his first stint, going to Minnesota, and then coming back to Baltimore. He's had his entire career. But he put it all together in this game. Plus, he had big contributions from Justin BK, Brandon Stevens. I mentioned had the interceptions. Stone had another interception. Honestly, kind of stole it away from Brandon Stevens. But you're getting contributions from everywhere. And to the Ravens' offense's credit, kind of the point I was making a couple minutes ago, to the Ravens' offense's credit, they went 4 for 4 in the red zone today. And that was big, considering that they were struggling to move the ball for a lot of the game. But when the defense gave them field position or when they got into the red area, they converted and they weren't settling for field goals. Justin Tucker missed an early big 53-yarder that bounced off the upright. But those are the types of things that you move on from. Now, whenever Justin Tucker makes a field goal, it's, Tucker for me is one of the big parts of this team and obviously, has been forever. But for me, whenever he misses a field goal, it shocks me. Like, it genuinely shocks me that he misses. It almost like it's automatic tuck, right? You expect the ball to go in. But the Ravens overcame that. Tucker hits a couple late, and the Ravens get a big win in a game that, again, you could chalk this up to a trap game and say, oh, well, the Ravens don't win these types of games because they play down to their competition. Did the Ravens play down to their competition today? I would say so. I think they did. I asked on social media, right? How do you feel? Do you feel good about this Ravens game? And I'm, if you want to comment, you want to tweet me, you want to put in live chat, how do you feel about this game? Do you feel good about it? Do you feel a little iffy about it? Are you not so confident anymore? The overall response was, you know what? It wasn't easy. It was sloppy, but a win is a win. And at this stage of the season, you still want to have the offense be more consistent because the whole point was, okay, well, last season we kind of got into this rhythm, and it was harder once Lamar went down, right? But you got into this rhythm early on in the year, but it was win, loss, win, loss. Lamar played like an MVP the first 3 weeks of the season last year, but then it all kind of started to go downhill, and obviously it all came to a head at the injury. This season, you didn't have as many consistent performances. It was either you played well for a half or played well for a quarter, and that was what won you the game or lost you it. But then that Detroit game gave you hope. And you're like, okay, awesome. This is a full 60-minute performance on offense. It was great. But then this game was kind of back to what it was in terms of they kind of played well in spurts, but didn't play well the entire game. So those are the kinds of things you kind of got to get over as we start to get further and further into the season. We're effectively halfway through the year, right? This will be week 9 coming up. There are 18 weeks in the season. So we're at the halfway point, or right next to the halfway point. Trade deadline coming up on Tuesday. You have to get more consistent, especially with a tough schedule after your bye and plus 2 divisional games before it. So there's a lot to like about this team, but still things that they can clean up for sure. And coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about the state of this team, the state of the offense, the state of the defense, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about here on this live instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. And I'm a big fantasy guy. We have the Locked On Ravens fantasy leagues going on this year. I'm in 5 of them right now, which is awesome. And our partners at eBay Motors, they've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Ben Out to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for maybe a daily draft or you're scouting the waiver wire for this week, every week we're providing you the players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's use Vinny's picked out for us in this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And for me, I'm a big Drake London guy. I have been for a while. And Falcons wide receiver, Drake London, he's had a rather quiet week against the Titans secondary. He caught only 5 passes for 55 yards today, but he should be targeted to get back on track with a much bigger game against a vulnerable Vikings secondary in week 9 with a potential quarterback change looming to Taylor Heineke. Atlanta should be more efficient and effective with their downfield passing team. Plus, London could also see some high volume in the game with Heineke under center. So, again, Vinny Out from Locked On Fantasy Football, he's going to help you win your fantasy championship. Championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. That's the same thing with a vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. They have brake kits over there. They have everything. They need headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your ride needs. eBay Motors has it, and plus with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or you get your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive. ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. We're back here. It's our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you talking Ravens football. After all wins are big at this time of year, a big 31-24 win over the Arizona Cardinals in week 8. Wasn't the prettiest game, wasn't the sloppiest game. Well, it was the sloppiest game, honestly. It was very sloppy. But they got the job done, right? They win, go 1-0, and they move their record to 6-2. They stay on top of the AFC North. There was actually a 3-way tie for second place in the North between the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Browns. All of those guys at 4-3. Let's look to the comments right now quickly here. We have a bunch of comments to get to. Henry in the chat saying we played down to the Cards. Gus the bus. Gus was awesome. And we've talked a lot this past couple of weeks about the Ravens and their trade situation. Do they need a running back? I don't know if Gus Edwards heard it. He said he didn't, but at the end of the day, Gus Edwards had a great game. Justice Hill, it feels like the Ravens still could stand to add a running back, though. We'll talk about it more in the final part of the show. But my thing, and I've talked about this with multiple people and others, is this is great. Justice Hill, you can do a good video. But what happens if Gus has a great game? What if he loses that? What if he lost okay? The Derrick Henry rumors doesn't really seem like that's the only thing, especially with Tennessee winning today. But a lesser tier running back. Like, to me, I don't know if Dalvin Cook moves the needle for me. I feel like a Zach Moss will be awesome, but who knows if the Colts trade him at this point. But a lower tier running back that will cost you like maybe a 4th or a 5th and then you can move from there. I think you're fine with that, especially if they can step in for an injured guy, if Gus Edwards has to miss time or Justice Hill has to miss time. But with Gus Edwards right now, he's one of the most efficient ball carriers in NFL history. He's done a great job for this Ravens team, being consistent year in and year out. Plus, you have the explosive ability of Justice Hill. Keaton Mitchell is still there. I don't want to just totally forget about Keaton Mitchell, but he is still there. So it's going to be interesting. But the Ravens did play down to the Cardinals. I do agree with you, Henry. Matt saying Jordan Stout needs his flowers. Jordan Stout's been awesome all year. I won't give it to him just today. All year, Jordan Stout's been awesome. It's been a very big flip. He's been flipping the field. A very big flip for the Ravens from what they saw last year, which was inconsistency. But I think he worked on his craft in the offseason. Obviously, he's been working with Sam Cook and that Ravens special teams coaching staff. They've done a great job with him. He's done a great job. And the fact that he's able to boom these punts, but also the ball placement has been really good this year. There were a couple times in this game where he flipped the field, put the Cardinals inside their own 10, their own 15, and forced the Cardinals to make something happen. And when they didn't, because Josh Dobbs had some terrible throws. The Ravens offense took advantage when the defense got their stop because of Jordan Stout's field flipping. So big shout out to Jordan Stout as well. Raven 76 saying Geno Stone's a ball hawk, and he says, I feel good about this game considering we traveled to the West Coast, still got the dub. I agree with Raven 76 be more here where, look, it's tough. Michael Pierce talked about it after the game. Doing all that traveling, I mean, imagine what they're going through. They go to London, they travel back to Baltimore, they go to Arizona, they're traveling back to Baltimore. They've done a lot of traveling over the course of the past couple of weeks, and it's not easy. So I do like the fact that they're responding. They've won 3 straight games, but it's how do you move forward from here? And I think part of it is, again, their depth stepping up when they need to. Geno Stone has stepped in for Marcus Williams. And one of the things we can talk about, and look, we're going to have to talk about a lot in the offseason, is Eric Acosta has a problem on his hands. And it's a good problem. It's a good problem to have. But you have Patrick Queen playing lights out, Geno Stone playing lights out, Blake Harrison playing really good football, Jase Medical playing lights out, Michael Pierce playing lights out, David Clowney playing really good football, Kyle Van Noy, all these defensive players, both young guys and veteran guys, the Ravens can't keep up with them. Now, we have to enjoy it now. We have to enjoy it in the now because they've done great all year. They've had guys step up. But is just Matabiki pricing himself out of Baltimore? Is Geno Stone pricing himself out of Baltimore? Patrick Queen? Those are all things we have to ask. Michael Pierce is going to retire at the end of his Ravens contract, or his 3-year deal back when he signed with the Ravens in 2022. And the Ravens actually chopped off a year on that deal this offseason, so he's going to be a free agent this year. Does he retire? There are some questions, but for right now, with all those guys I mentioned, plus Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, and Odafe Owe, and all these guys playing super, super well. The defense is playing elite football. I mean, in this game, the Ravens struggled on third down offensively, 4 of 11. But the Cardinals didn't do much better. The Ravens defense held them to 5 of 12. So part of that is Josh Dobbs was just not good today. He was not. But other parts of it is Geno Stone coming up with a clutch interception. Brandon Stevens coming up with a clutch interception. You can have those moments and praise the defense for it. And, they've had their moments all season long. They've been awesome. Matt saying, encouraging to see us put up 30 offensively. We do need to be more consistent. Yeah, I mean, 30 is awesome. They put up 30-plus in 2 straight weeks after, I think, a pretty lackluster performance in London. But, again, those London games can get pretty wacky and pretty weird. It is a good step in the right direction, but the consistency, as Matt says, is the key. You can't just be good for a quarter. You can't just be good in the red zone, right? There has to be consistency all the way through for these offenses, all across the league, not just the Ravens, right? But all across the league. And the Ravens have to find that, especially because we're now halfway through the season with week 9 coming up. And it's going to be a big stretch for him in these next couple of weeks before the bye. Frank saying Geno's doing what he did in college. Yeah, Geno Stone to me was a 4th or 5th round pick. The Ravens got him in the 7th round. It was a steal for me. It was incredible the value they got for him. I think they traded back up to get Geno Stone in that draft. They cut him. He's been a great story. He's going to earn a lot of money. I have doubts the Ravens will be able to retain him. He would probably have to take a team-friendly deal in order for them to do something like that, especially if they want to also bring back Matabike and Queen, etc. But he's earned it. He's done a great job. His ball instincts have been incredible this year. We saw it again on the play, the interception he had today. He's the interceptions leader in the entire NFL. 5 interceptions for 8 weeks. He's been awesome the entire year. David say Ravens did good. They won. That's what counts. Yeah, on the actual record sheet, want to know is what matters. Against the Cardinals, maybe would like to see a bit more dominance. The game get closed out a little better. Nelson Aguilar on the hands team. I don't know about that one personally, but he ends up coming up with the clutch fielding of the onside kick the second time around. But it was wobbling around in there. It was wobbling around. So Aguilar in the hands team was a questionable decision. The game didn't get closed out in the prettiest fashion, but the game was closed out. Aiden saying, how many other teams will be happy looking at our injury report so far this year? Here's another healthy week. Imagine where we were. Let's all go back to where we were in week 3. At that point, the Ravens had lost, how many? Multiple. Almost a dozen players to injury. The silver lining was that none of them outside of J.K. Dobbins and a couple others that were, not J.K. Dobbins level players were season ending. You were going to get Marcus Williams back. Obviously, he's out again, but you were going to get him back. Adafe Owe, Ronnie Stanley, Tyler Linderbaum, et cetera, right? You were going to get those guys back, Marlon Humphrey. And you get them all back, and now it's really Marcus Williams who's the only injured Raven, per se. I didn't have a chance to look at John Harbaugh and what he had to say. These 4 o'clock games kind of kill me because I live stream on Bleacher Report after the games. I also was Locked On NFL, so I was doing stuff for that. So I didn't have a chance to look at a ton of the post game stuff. So I'm not sure whether whether John Harbaugh had any injury updates. In the chat. If you want to update me, you can. But Aiden has a good point. Literally, the Ravens have been outside of the early part of the season. They have been blessed with not having season-ending injuries outside of JK and a couple other guys. So hopefully they can continue that stretch. I think who went down in this game? Patrick Queen was shaken up, I think. Arthur Millette went down. And maybe one other guy I'm forgetting. Maybe. But other than that, Adafe Owe went down, but he came back in the game. And Odell did too, but he came back in the game. So it's all these staples. But at the end of the day, Baltimore ended up with a pretty clean sheet of health so far through 8 weeks, which is very good for them. Coming up in the final part of the show, it's everybody's favorite part, right? Trade talk. We'll talk about trade talk continuing, get into the comments as well. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to talk about here on this episode of Locked On Ravens. First, this episode is brought to you by DoorDash. And DoorDash is awesome because, sometimes maybe the game went to a timeout or it's halftime and there's a stoppage in play. You want to get a snack. For me, I know I've went to get something to eat a couple times during a game and there's no food. But you can get that thing out of there with DoorDash because the worry of no food, DoorDash solves that. In the Baltimore area, if you're a Ravens fan in the Baltimore area, maybe you're a pizza guy, you want Underground Pizza Company, maybe you like sushi. You do Sushi Hana or Daily Sushi. They have so many options in and around the Baltimore area. And you can order, whether you want the game day experience, like wings and you can do pizza, soda, burgers, or maybe snacks, like chips, dip, nachos. And for me, I'm a big nacho guy. You can kick back and kick off with unbeatable deals and everything you need for the watch party or the tailgate. And at DoorDash, you can get 50% off of the $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. You can get prepared before game day too. Stock up on your favorite appetizers and order all your tailgate gear on DoorDash. And then get ready to watch your team win. Get 50% off of the $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app. Enter code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. 50% off of the $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCK23. Subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget to use code LOCK23 for 50% off of the $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more, subject to change, terms apply. We're back. It's our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking on this Sunday night. Thank you so much for being a part of the late night crew. Making Locked On Ravens your first decision every day. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow on audio form, of course, for 5 days a week. In addition, doing these live shows after every single Ravens game and big news. So if the Ravens make a trade, we're doing a live stream, breaking everything down, instant reaction episode, much like we do for the post games. We do it after free agent signing, et cetera, et cetera. So it's awesome. You can also subscribe over on Subtext for exclusive access to insiders and other things as well. But for the Ravens, this big win over the Cardinals, I wouldn't say it was a momentum-setting win or a tone-setting win. But they got the job done, which I guess is what matters in this instance. For me, though, with the trade talk, and we'll get into that as well. For me, I could see 3 positions for the Ravens, 3 of them. Running back, cornerback, and edge. I know there's been a lot of talk about wide receiver. There's been a lot of talk about maybe offensive line. But I just feel like realistically, people aren't going to give up offensive linemen for cheap. It's always going to be expensive. And wide receiver wise, I think they're confident in their guys. So at this point, I feel like it's going to be either running back, corner, or edge if the Ravens decide to add anyone as, just any contributor, whether it be a high-level guy, maybe a mid guy, or a low-level guy as well. And looking at the comments here, Speaking the Truth says, what do you think it will take for us to be consistent? I think, if anything, it'll be time. I mean, defensively, they're as consistent as ever for the most part. Yes, defensively, they did get gashed on the ground a little bit. We can admit that. There were a couple of miscommunications. I know Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey talked about that post-game. I didn't end up seeing that. But sometimes they weren't even lined up in the right spots. But offensively, we have to kind of take a step back and look at the journey of this offense so far. New system with Todd Monken. New pieces coming in like Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers, etc. Guys get injured up and down weeks 1 through 3, so there weren't consistent snaps getting everybody on the starting unit involved with each other because the guys weren't playing. I'm not using those as excuses. I'm just saying it could be a reason, right? The Ravens have to be more consistent, right? It's not something where you can say, oh, well, it's okay because, especially now you have to start to get more consistent on offense. I just think time. Where if they had been healthy the whole way through, maybe by this point they would have had a lot more bearings to how to play with this guy or this guy prefers the ball. But they had to go through a lot to start the season, and now I think they're catching up. But they have to do it quickly. They have to do it quickly here. Frank says we could definitely use another back, one that can step in when needed, but not one that'll eat Gus's carries. I mean, I think you could do like a three-headed monster. I mean, that was the plan all along with JK, where it was going to be JK, Gus, and Justice Hill, and that was going to be fine for him. I feel like a move like a Derrick Henry, a Josh Jacobs, a Saquon Barkley, I don't know if the Ravens want to pay a running back. I mean, historically they haven't. There was a whole deal with JK, and obviously it's different because of his injury history situation. But with Saquon, you're trading, and Jacobs, right? You're trading essentially for two guys who are up for contracts after the season, after they had the franchise tag used on them. Derrick Henry would make a lot of sense, but, I feel like that ship has sailed unless the Ravens want to give up a third or a second for him. So I feel like a lower level running back. I still go back to Zach Moss. Interesting names could be Aaron Jones from the Packers, Miles Sanders from the Panthers. Those contracts you got to work out too, but those are two guys I could maybe see being moved. Aiden saying Justice Hill. Aiden just says Justice Hill. Good comment, Aiden. I'm a big Justice Hill guy, and I give him a lot of credit because he was somebody that I had off my roster like 2021. I didn't really know what to make of him. Goes on injured reserve, comes back last year, shows burst, gets a bigger role this year. And I think for the most part, it's played really, really well. Raven76B more saying, you're right, KO. Enjoy every Sunday while we can. I enjoy watching the defense. It's fun. This defense is dominant. Mike McDonald has his guys. I talked about all the players. Mike McDonald there's a lot of conversation about promise him the head coaching job. Coach John Harbaugh, his time's up. We'll see. Mike McDonald is doing one heck of a deal this year with this Ravens defense. We have Cam in here. Hey, Kevin, it's Cam. Hope you enjoy the win. Gus Plus appreciation team. Andrew as well. Love the Ravens in your content. I appreciate you, Cam. Thanks for your support. I appreciate you. I mean, yeah, this was the Gus Edwards game and the Michael Pierce game. Both those guys, major props and major shout out. Mark Andrews gets the hometown touchdown. So it was a good game for those guys, but I just wish, again, a bit more consistency would have gone a long way. Raven 76B more leaving Florida, flying to Baltimore for the Seahawks game. Well, that's awesome. I hope you enjoy your time at the game. It should be an awesome experience. The Ravens do a great job. Joe saying Gus saved us draft capital tonight. No running back trade needed less we had a corner. I hear you, Joe. I hear you. But my counter to you, and I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. What if the Ravens lose Gus? Are you confident in a Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell, Melvin Gordon, Owen Wright backfield? Would you rather get a trustworthy running back for a fifth or a sixth? Some people's answer is go get the running back. Other people's answer is I'm fine with that. Either way, I'm interested to hear everybody's thoughts on that, including you, Joe, since you brought it up. And let's go get a corner. I'm in the camp of corner. My number one trade target for the Ravens is Dante Jackson. Realistically, I don't think the Ravens get a Pat Surtain or a Daniil Hunter. It would be awesome. I would love those guys, but I just don't think it happens. Paul saying Bateman had a great catch. Yeah, definitely. That was a game-defining play early on, in my opinion. King saying, think we should either trade for Saquon or Chase or Burns. We need impact players. Chase Young or Montez Sweat could both be your intriguing options too. The Commanders with that loss to Philly today could definitely be a situation where the Commanders move off of one or both of those guys. That'd be interesting. Aiden saying, honestly, I'm a Washington fan. He's pretty stingy and valued Chase Young at a second rounder and Sweat at a first, so I take Young for a third and some change. I'm not trading a second for Chase Young or a first for Sweat. I think Sweat fetches a third and Young fetches a fourth. I think that's maybe where it gets for him. Maybe it's a fourth and a fourth, a third and a fourth either way, but I'm not doing all that when it comes to those two guys. Cam saying only trade should be for a player the Ravens intend on re-signing, like a Roquan. What a steal that was. Yeah. If you're trading quality draft capital, then yes. If you're trading a fourth or a fifth, I'm not as crazy about a re-signing. Doesn't have to be one, because if the Ravens trade, let's say, a fourth for a guy and that guy leaves in free agency and gets a fifth round comp pick value contract, you get that comp pick anyway. So if you're going to re-sign the guy, yes, if the guy fits well, like the Ngakoue trade, when the Ravens traded a third and a fifth, the Ravens got a comp pick back for Ngakoue because he signed the contract, fully guaranteed deal with the Raiders. So it's interesting when you talk about how teams move with the deadlines, because if Roquan had left, the Ravens would have gotten a third round comp pick anyway. Now, obviously, it would have been a very poor move to let him go, but I'm just saying that's what would have happened. Frank saying we're still going through the growing pains of the new offense, but we're doing it while winning and mostly on the road. We still haven't peaked yet. We'll be hitting on all cylinders when it matters. That's a really good comment, Frank. I really like that comment, because it's the stuff I've been hitting on, but you put it in a really good way, because there were always going to be growing pains of an offense. They're winning on the road. They've been on the road a ton this season so far. And I agree, they have not peaked yet. This is not peak Ravens offensive football. You want to hit your peak in December, January. You want to build up to that January, February peak. You don't want to peak in November and then tail off, and by the time January comes, you're done. So that, to me, is an awesome comment, because those are the types of things you want. You want it to be you're learning throughout the early portions of the season, and then you can apply things later. Obviously, you want to have more consistency. I'm not saying you don't. But at this point, for a team that could maybe add a running back or an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, I still think running back is the most realistic option for the offense. There's a lot to like about it in terms of what else the Ravens could do there. Cam saying Henry Alexander or Young/Fletch. Here's my number one target, but I don't think they're going to trade him. It breaks my heart, but I don't think they're going to trade him. So I think my realistic options would be like a Zach Moss, Miles Sanders, Aaron Jones. Corner-wise, maybe a Dante Jackson, and edge-wise, maybe a Chase Young or a Montez Sweat. But the Ravens picking up a huge win over the Arizona Cardinals. Not consistent, not pretty, but a win, and puts the Ravens again atop the AFC North at 6-2 with a Week 9 matchup against the Seattle Seahawks looming. That's all I have for you here today, though, on this live edition of Locked On Ravens. I appreciate everybody making me a part of your late night. Let me get back here tomorrow on Monday. It'll be more Ravens content, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.